Alrighty, folks, let's get things going. Welcome to the March 11th, 2026 meeting of Arlington's Transportation Future Advisory Working Group. This meeting is open to the public, and time for public comment will be reserved for the end of the meeting. During the main portion of the meeting, conversation is limited to members of the advisor group, as well as staff and consultants who are supporting the advisory group. All meeting participants, please keep your devices muted until you're called upon by the chair. That's me. If you lose internet connectivity during the meeting, don't forget you can reconnect via phone. The Teams chat is there for just two reasons. One is if you need technical assistance, you're having some technical issues, or second, for members of the public to add their name to the list for public comment, which will be taken at the end of the meeting. The Teams chat is not to be used for discussion. Those wanting to provide public comment should do so at the end of the meeting. The chat is not that opportunity. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public comment period. Advisory working group members, if you want to be recognized, like always, raise your virtual hand. Let's see, do we have anybody participating by phone? I don't see any phone numbers, so we don't have to worry about that. And members of the public, if you would like to provide public comment, you'll be called on to speak at the end of the meeting. You'll get 2 to 3 minutes, depending on how much time we've managed to save there at the end. If you want to speak, you could just put your name in the meeting chat anytime. We'll put you on the speakers list. This is a public forum. Today's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county website. All information associated with the meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to Freedom of Information Act requirements. And with that said, let's jump on through. Let's get to introductions. I am Chris Slatt. I'm the chair of this working group, former chair of the Transportation Commission back in the day. Do we have anybody from Arlington Neighborhoods Advisory Committee this evening? All right. How about Bicycle Advisory Committee?
Mike Hanna here from BAC.
Welcome, Mike. C2E2?
Liliana Diaz here.
Good to see you, Liliana. Commission on Aging. Not this evening, or at least not yet. Disability Advisory Commission.
Hi, this is Elizabeth Prio.
Great to have you, Elizabeth. Economic Development Commission. Fiscal Affairs Advisory Commission. Forestry and Natural Resources Commission. Neighborhood Complete Streets Commission.
Aaron Schutz, present and accounted for.
Good to see you, Aaron. Parks and Rec Commission.
Good evening, everyone. Daniel here.
Welcome, Daniel. Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I thought I saw Pam, but now I do not see Pam.
Pam was
yeah. Maybe she's having some connection issues. I know Planning Commission has a conflict. Transit Advisory Committee, I think, has a conflict. How about Transportation Commission?
Justin Furman here for Transportation Commission.
Good to see you, Justin.
And then I'll do a round of staff and our consultants. I think everybody knows everybody at this point in time, but I'm Kristen. I'm the project manager. I'll help Alice and Brian and then keep team and then our consultants introduce themselves.
Hi again, everyone. Allison Bullock, Transportation Planning.
Brian Shelton, Active Transportation Planner and Deputy Project Manager.
And then I'm Erin Potter, and I'm the lead public engagement for this project.
Nate Graham, Public Engagement.
And good evening. My name is David Samba. I'm a transportation engineer and planner, and I'm the consultant team project manager.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nick Adamo. I am a transportation planner on the consultant team.
Then I think I just saw one more advisory group member join us if they could introduce themselves.
Hi, this is Claire Noakes with the Fiscal Advisory Committee, Fiscal Affairs Advisory Committee. Commission, I'm sorry.
Welcome, Claire.
With that, I'm going to kick off the presentation. Chris, that sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. So today we will be covering kind of an update on where we are with the draft modal priority networks, and then our roadway classification. So we shared a lot of kind of what we heard at our last or meeting before last and last meeting, but just a reminder about what we heard during phase 3 engagement was strong for support for, a high quality multimodal transportation system. Did John CC other people? Can someone email on staff, John Carey? He's having issues getting into the meeting. We heard strong support from the community on a robust transportation system, a multimodal high quality one, as kind of desires from the community. When we brought out the proposal to the community that pedestrians would be our top priority in kind of our decision making when we look at transportation projects and changes, that received strong support. People really see the value of prioritizing pedestrian safety and comfort in our network. When we asked kind of about the two priority networks, there was strong support for an improved transit connections. We heard that the Longbridge Aquatic Center is an important destination to people, and they don't feel that it's well served today. Does not have service today. Support especially for reaching our high schools via transit. When we did our engaged kind of touch points with our high school students, we heard a lot about their desire to be able to kind of get around both by bike and by transit. And then across kind of different engagement types, different parts of the county, people really called out the Roslyn-Ballston Metro Corridor as somewhere that they want to be able to bus to. When kind of we focused in on the bicycle and micromobility network, people kind of flagged that they don't feel that the proposed network at the time really addressed some of their access desires between Crystal City and Aurora Hills to the Shirlington area, that they just want to see better connectivity in general from today into the future for north-south connections throughout the county. And then again, connections in the priority network are really important for people who want to get to the schools within the county, for people who want to get to metro rail stations, and people who want to get to kind of our trailheads. I'm going to stop myself there for a second because I do think we've had a few more advisory group members join us, and I would love to give them the opportunity to be recognized as part of the meeting. So if you didn't introduce yourself in those first kind of rounds of meetings and you've joined us, just raise your hand and introduce yourself. It looks like Pam's got hers up. Sorry.
Hi, I apologize. I'm having terrible computer problems. I have to switch to Brian's computer, so I'm here.
Welcome, Pam. Good to have you.
Pedestrian Advisory Committee.
And Kaylee?
Hi, everybody. My name is Kaylee McKenna. I retired from the Air Force last year. I work at Beacon Global Strategies, and I serve on Arlington's Economic Development Commission. So I am our new liaison to the Transportation Commission. So happy to be here.
Welcome.
I think I also saw John.
Yep, I'm here. John Carey, Forestry Commission.
We have a really good turnout tonight. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving with the presentation. We talked about this a little bit at one of the previous meetings, that we'd been talking about how we identify pedestrian priority in the county, how we recognize kind of the importance that our streets play in that connectivity. And as staff, we really talked about the destinations that we see people really walking to, and knowing that those are places people want to walk to and will continue to be walking to. In these conversations, we thought about the existing pedestrian priority zones within kind of the county's transportation plan of the pedestrian element. Those include schools, they include county facilities, so libraries and community centers. They include our commercial activity areas, and they include bus stops and metro rail stations. The distances around those range from half a mile to a mile. When you look at the distance around those, pretty much the totality of the county falls within one of those zones. There was no kind of level of importance given to different destinations, which we thought kind of could be addressed through this refresh of the plan. We talked about the places people really do walk to, and we want to make sure that there's a safe pedestrian route to those destinations. Schools within the county really elevated to the top. County facilities, our libraries and our community centers, our parks, and then those commercial retail areas themselves having safe and comfortable pedestrian facilities was really something we thought was important. We talked a lot about how far that distance should be. And one of the things we want to talk about is really making sure we're elevating the most important part of that. And that's kind of the closest you are to that, where the most people will be walking. So for those destinations, we said, okay, that's our tier one. If this street falls within 1/8 of a mile of a school, a county facility, a park, or our commercial is within our commercial areas, we're going to call those tier one streets. The next tier, so anything that doesn't fall in tier one, but happens to be within 1/4 mile of a metro rail station, a transit center, or our previous premium transit network bus stops, which include the Columbia Pike Corridor, the Crystal City Transitway, Langston Boulevard, and Glebe Road, as defined by the transit plan, Arlington Transit Strategic Plan. Those are our tier two. Tier three, we go back to those destinations that were in tier one, but we look at kind of the next distance out. So are you within the 1/8 of the mile to 1/4 mile of those facilities? Tier four also kind of tiers out from what was in tier two and says, okay, let's go. Did I stop sharing my screen?
No, we can still see it.
Oh, interesting. Minor challenge on my end. Apologies. I think I've got it back up. There we go. We go out from that concentric area to the next kind of part that's within the 1/4 to half and says, okay, these would be in tier four if they have not already been kind of given a priority within the first 3 tiers. And then the next one we look at is any bus stop within the county, any street that's within 1/8 of a mile that has not already been identified in the first 4 tiers gets a tier 5. And then tier 6 is any street in the county that happens to not have already been identified in those first 5 tiers. What does that look like? That looks like this. I recognize that you are looking at this on a laptop screen. There's a lot of streets. There's a lot of colors. It's probably hard to really get in this, but green is tier 1. Green covers about 60% of the streets within the county, but that also makes a lot of sense. We have a lot of schools. We have a lot of parks. We have, oh, I should know the number of metro rail stations off of the top. No, metro rail is the next tier. We have a lot of commercial areas. There's a lot of destinations people want to be walking to in the county. These are kind of just the first tier of areas that we think are important for people to walk to. Tiers 2, 3, and 4 combined represent 34 of the streets in the county. Sorry, it's tiers 2, 3, and 4 combined, and tiers 5 and 6. I did not edit this well. Tiers 5 and 6 represent 6%. So those bottom 2 tiers are only 6% of the streets within the county. You can see they're kind of on the periphery, the edges, where we have a lot more low density, less destinations that people want to be getting to. Sidewalks are still important, but they're not as important as those sidewalks that connect to our parks, that connect to our schools, that connect to our libraries and our community centers. Another thing that we're talking about, kind of thinking about from a tier and overlay perspective, are the vulnerability indices that our comprehensive CPHD planning group has come up with that really kind of elevate the most vulnerable areas of the county. If you're in a tier 1 facility street and you are also in one of the most vulnerable areas of the county, we want to make sure that there's complete sidewalks. We have not overlaid this with kind of the completeness of the sidewalks. I would say a good portion of our tier 1 streets are also likely going to be streets that already have sidewalks, but this is just kind of one of the framings that we'll be looking at through the plan about the importance of pedestrian access to these types of destinations. I think the biggest takeaway for us is that we know there are a lot of places that people want to and will be walking to, and that's an important thing for the plan to reflect. So that's kind of our pedestrian priority, what we've been doing from an analysis perspective to start framing how we approach it within the draft plan. For the bicycle and micromobility network, we started with some of the guidance that exists within the current MTP. There is a kind of goal to provide a low traffic stress bicycle route within 1/4 mile, at least 80 people of households in 2025, and by 95% of households by 2030. We took a look at what we've developed for the priority network and said, okay, are we doing that if this network is built? If the priority network is built, 99.8% of households within the county would be within 1/4 mile of one of these facilities. That's great. But one of the things that we really wanted to dive into is to see if there's kind of areas that fall in the gaps a little bit. So we looked at an eighth of a mile too. This is kind of the mesh density that we're looking for connectivity within the bicycle and micromobility network. When we did the eighth of the mile buffer, if the facilities are developed to the appropriate type for the street type on the priority network, 95.9% of all households in the county would be within an eighth of a mile of a priority bike facility. That's like a 2-mile bike ride. It's a 5-minute to 6-minute if you want to walk your bike max to that facility. That is really good. That is meeting and exceeding the targets for kind of what we want to see in the current plan. We recognize that this isn't implemented yet, but it is that future that we want to be looking towards. So we wanted to make sure that the network we're planning will, if implemented, meet that access for people in the future. We also recognize that there's a couple of areas in the county where we see some gaps that don't have that eighth of a mile access overall. Some areas kind of north of Donaldson Run, around Taylor Elementary School, in the Bluemont area, around Thomas Jefferson Middle School, in the kind of Trade Center 31st area south of Shirlington, near Gunston Middle School in the community center, and then Aurora Hills. We kind of looked at these areas to see if there were opportunities to fill those gaps. The first is in Aurora Hills. We think that there's an opportunity to put a bike priority representation within the network, north-south, to kind of recognize that we have a current low-stress route, north-south, that could provide additional connectivity within the network so that people know where they can go and expect that comfortable route. We also talked a lot internally about 28th Street, Gunston access in this area. It is a a transit priority 2 corridor. We looked at the current volumes on 28th Street. We looked at how it's constructed now. It's currently on the bike network as a comfortable route. It's signed, it has sharrows. We looked at it and we said, based off of kind of the context on the ground today, a shared facility makes sense from a bike priority perspective. And we talked about whether or not we should put it on because it's not a corridor where we would think about taking parking for a protected facility because the volumes don't warrant it. But by putting it on, it means that we think that connectivity in this area is important for bicycles and scooters in the future, for people choosing to use those. And by putting it on too, if there's any changes in the future to kind of how the road is programmed or opportunities to change it, if the land use changes in the area, if there's opportunities for changes in facilities behind the curb, we thought it was important to recognize the need for connectivity in this area because it is a gap within the proposed network. Another that we looked at was kind of front door access from a routing perspective for Thomas Jefferson Middle School and the community center. 2nd Street is not a street that we really think is going to be able to accommodate dedicated facilities. It has enough volume on it that it would warrant it if we were to do something along those lines. But there are some lower volume streets that if we want to do bike boulevard treatments, if necessary, put in the appropriate signage, do create kind of a front door access to the school. There's already a crosswalk that could be improved at South Jackson. So that's a connection within the network that we're thinking about adding to the priority network to help close that kind of gap in that area. We are also kind of looking at the Bluemont area. There's a ton of great bicycle facilities within the area from the WNOD and the Bluemont Trail, but there's just a little bit of north-south kind of lack of connectivity if you kind of look at the WNOD, and then you have to go all the way over to George Mason to get to our next priority route. So we looked at kind of adding a north-south connection along North Jefferson Street to connect north. We've got a signal there already. It's got volumes that make it comfortable to ride on right now from a vehicular perspective, signage, and if in the future any necessary bike boulevard treatments could be how you realize bike priority on this corridor. And we think it's good to kind of recognize the need for additional signed routes to be comfortable in this area. So we're proposing we add additional bike priority in this area there. We also recognize the area south of Shirlington, South Quincy to 31st Street has a gap within the network. 31st Street has a lot going on. There's garden apartments. There's lots of demand for that parking on street because they don't have it built into their neighborhood, into their communities. We've got a well-used transit route. It's transit priority 2 along 31st Street. We looked at it and we really don't see opportunities to change the way the right-of-way is allocated along 31st Street in anytime soon in any realistic way. But we did want to recognize and say, in the future, we need better connectivity in this area. And one of the ideas we're thinking about long-term is recognizing the need for some sort of trail off-street connection between 4 Mile Run Drive and Abington. So that is something we're proposing be integrated into the recommended priority network for bicycles and micromobility. Another is just kind of recognizing some of the lower volume streets for North Ditmar Road and North Vermont Street to get you to the Gulf Branch Nature Trail. These streets are already low volume. These are streets that, by kind of recognizing the importance of just having connectivity and where to point people to expect a safe and comfortable route, we think adding these to the priority network helps fill in some of that lack of density in this part of the county. And then the final recommendation is to get access to North Taylor Elementary School by kind of recognizing the lower volume context on North Vacation Lane and Stewart Street to provide connectivity to Military Road, where we do have bike priority recommended, and really close in that gap. So I know I just kind of talked about a number of them, but you can look at those, see, and they really do kind of hit the areas where we have destinations as well as areas where there is not currently a bike priority route within a 1/4 of a mile. There's some other areas that we recognize, you know, the golf course, the airport, the cemetery, Potomac Overlook Park. Those areas, while they don't have access, also don't have kind of the same amount of people trying to get there or people who live there trying to get somewhere else. You can see a really small gap at the Coast Guard facility. One that we recognize that's going to be hard to fill in just is Circuitorious, is kind of this pocket right at the county line. There's some places where we're just not going to get perfect, but I think it is good to recognize that the 95.9% of households within the county within an 1/8 of a mile was before we started looking at what we could do to close those gaps. We're going to put those into the network, look again, and I anticipate we are going to see that number get even higher. That's great. This is still a proposed network that we're working towards, but we need to have that proposed network that we know serves the community's future needs so that we can plan and work towards it over time. The final network that we looked at was the transit priority network. We looked at kind of a similar 1/4 mile and 1/8 of a mile buffer from the transit stops, so the bus stops that will exist along kind of the current network as it works today, and then the network that would be realized if the priority network was implemented. We also overlaid that on the transit, on the equity analysis areas to kind of see if the areas that did not have or don't have as much access, if those are also our highest priority or highest vulnerability areas. So when you look at the current 1/4 mile buffer from stops proposed to the priority network, you see that we fill in gaps. There's less, or there's more area served by the transit network. And you can see that the dark areas, our highest vulnerability areas in the county, all have transit access within a 1/4 mile of those areas. We did the same kind of exercise for the transit network that we did for the bicycle and micromobility network. And we went down to the 1/8 of a mile. For those, we're still having some really good coverage for that 1/8 of a mile access within our highest vulnerability areas. So you can see everywhere that's shaded in here has access. There are some areas kind of in the middle area between the Pike and Route 50 where you're falling within that 1/4 mile to an 1/8 of a mile. So you don't fall in that 1/8 of a mile to the stop anymore. And then a little less connectivity or access in the 1/8 of a mile compared to the corner up in our northern parts of the county. We also kind of wanted to understand what this meant from household access to bus stops. So we looked at the household access to these networks. So Currently, there are 97% of households in the county are within a quarter mile of a bus stop. The priority network would push that up to 98% of households in the county would be in a quarter mile of a bus stop. In the eighth of a mile, we've got 81% of homes within or households within the county fall within an eighth of a mile of a bus stop. The priority network improves that more than it does kind of the quarter mile, up to 84% of households in the county are within an eighth of a mile of a bus stop. That's pretty good. The 85%-ish zone is a very high kind of coverage from a bus stop perspective to households. We also recognize some of the areas where you don't see homes within the eighth of a mile of a bus stop would also be very difficult to serve by fixed route transit. There's not a corridor that makes sense to run transit on. There aren't a lot of like more closely, densely spaced destinations for people to go to. Doesn't mean that transit access isn't important to people who live here. So it's an area that, like, as we continue to look at things like flexible transit opportunities within the county, those would be areas that we think would be kind of up for conversations about how we serve them through more flexible styles of transit compared to fixed route, which really needs like enough density, enough riders, kind of the right of way to run a bus on. So we thought that this was a really good kind of back check on this network, and we're comfortable with what we're seeing for a future plan implementation. So those were the priority networks. We're also kind of looking at the roadway classifications in the county. For those of you who aren't transportation planners and don't do this every day, functional classifications are what we talk about and kind of reference for the role a road plays within the transportation network. They're kind of broken down into different types of facilities based off of how much mobility they provide versus how much access they provide. They're kind of given assignments based off of how long the road is, how many trips it serves, where it goes, how many homes or businesses or other destinations are accessed along that roadway. And it's really important that we have kind of a way to assign these categories to roads, because it really helps us inform kind of how we design roads, what future land uses might be appropriate, or setbacks, things along those lines around those roads. And you can see kind of a little bit of a chart. Roads that provide the most mobility, so move the most people, get you the most places, are arterials. They're moving more people. Collectors kind of play a middle role within the network. They move people, but they also provide access. And then local facilities really are just kind of, they're providing you access. They're either where you start your trip or where you're ending your trip if it's not kind of a major destination. But they're all still providing service to people who need to move within the county. So the current transportation plan and the streets element identified roadway classifications within the county. There are currently a number of classifications. We have controlled access highways. That's what you see in red on this map. We have arterial streets, both principal and minor. Dark blue, principal, carries more trips. Light blue carries less trips than the dark blue. And then we have local streets. We have local principals, and then there's local minors or locals. Those darker black streets are kind of the local principals. They do a little bit more than your just local, but it doesn't recognize kind of the connectivity that they play within the county. So we looked at all of this and thought we really do need to think about the classifications within the county. We haven't done this since the plan, the streets element, was adopted in 2011. Having two general classifications for all of the streets that we manage within the county, being arterials or locals, doesn't really accurately reflect our network. There are a lot of streets that do more than just provide local trips, and there's streets that do less than an arterial as far as like big connections, but provide a lot of important connectivity within the county. So we took a look at all of the streets and made some tweaks, did some reclassifications. Some of the streets that are currently minor arterials became collectors, some locals became collectors, all really to reflect on that connectivity and access they provide within the county. We did this as a base off of the 2011 MTP street classifications. We wanted to know what our predecessors had done. We wanted to kind of understand that context that they saw in 2011. We also looked at the average daily traffic volumes on streets for the past 5 years to give us kind of a bigger picture understanding of what's happening on those streets, just not on a day-by-day basis, but over the past 5 years. We looked at our modal priority networks. If we're running transit on a street, that's probably a street that's paying a little bit more importance within our network than a local street. And then we also just kind of looked at what it connects within the network. Is it providing connectivity between places we know people want to be? So we did that, and we came up with classifications that are somewhat similar to the previous plan, but more in line with what most cities and counties do. We have limited access, which are kind of like the freeways. You don't, have sidewalks along them as frequently. They're really kind of your longer haul trips. We have 2 types of arterials. We have principal and minor, like the previous plan, but we've introduced collectors, major and minors, to really reflect on the importance that some streets within the county play from a connectivity perspective. And then we still have a lot of local streets in the county. So you can see this map. There's streets that kind of just make sense. We've got a lot of arterials like George Mason, Glebe, Langston Boulevard, Columbia Pike, Richmond Highway as our principal arterials. We've got some minor arterials on here like Crystal City Drive, Arlington Ridge Road. We've got portions of Lurkham Lane. We've got Williamsburg Boulevard. We've got Wilson Boulevard to the county line in Glebe. Those are minor arterials. We have major collectors. Those are kind of a new classification. Those are really providing some connectivity within the county, but they're not your bigger trips. 23rd Street. We've got Patrick Henry. We have for Malren's minor arterial, Shirlington Road. Those are all ones that we are calling major collectors. They're moving people. You're using them to get places, but there's also a lot of driveways that you're getting in and out of off of them. And we've got some minor collectors that are really just recognizing the fact that people are using these to get places. They're not just the streets that people who are either living on them or happen to have a small business along them are using, but people in general do use them to get places in the county. We think it's important to recognize that because they do. They're important to making sure people can continue to move around Arlington. And then we have a lot of local streets. A lot of streets were locals before. A lot of streets are going to stay local in the future. This foundation is going to be what we create our street typologies off of. So the street typologies are going to talk to the different ways that we think about how wide sidewalks need to be, potentially setbacks, if there are or are not different kind of elements within the streetscape for those typologies. We're anticipating that there are going to be about 3 different types of typologies for arterials, probably associated to kind of how the road feels. Lower density arterials will probably exist, things like George Mason in areas or Wilson Boulevard to the west of Glebe. We're probably going to have a mid-tier, Columbia Pike, Langston Boulevard, and then some of our more active, our activity arterials. Think Fairfax Drive, Joyce Street, Lynn, Fort Myer, that have a lot of activity happening on them. We are going to tie our curb hierarchy to those typologies. I think that's something we heard from this advisory group, was that it's not just a one size fits all curb hierarchy, but that like a local street in Ballston is going to have a different type of feel from a hierarchy perspective along the curb than a local streets in, Donaldson Run. Those are they're both locals, but they have different typologies. There's going to be a more mixed use typology for locals versus a lower density typology. And that's what we're going to be tying our curb hierarchy to. It's not pulled together yet because we had to do this work first. So that's something we'll be sharing at the next meeting. But I kind of wanted to give you guys the context of why something that's kind of just, we do this because we're supposed to do it to recognize the importance of a network and its connectivity that's providing. It's really going to play into some of the typologies we create that speak to the things that people care about, where we want sidewalks on both sides of the street, how wide those sidewalks are, how we use the curb lane, if there is or isn't kind of some sort of seating area for restaurants along the corridor. This is the foundation that we build and spring into from there. So this is a lot more just kind of the network does what the network does, but it's going to inform kind of the context we provide moving forward on how we plan that network from how it feels for people. And with that, I'm going to stop talking and hand it back over to Chris.
All right. I'll get my camera back on. Thanks so much, Kristen. Great. So that was a lot of information. So if you have any questions about any of that, whether about the updated priority networks or the street typologies or anything, we've got some time here to get those answered. So if so, just raise your hand and knock those out. Go ahead, Pam.
Hi, will we have access to expandable maps that we can play with and share?
So the maps will be the maps that are in the presentation. They are higher resolution, so you'll be able to zoom in and out on them, but we're not posting these maps in draft form right now.
But they'll be in the presentation that you'll be posting. Okay, that would be helpful. Do you have any maps that you didn't show that overlap the vulnerability indices with the maps?
Just the ones for transit so far.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be great for pedestrians too.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Busy map already. We kind of didn't want to throw too much on this slide.
I want pedestrian stuff on everything.
I feel that.
All right, Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, I like a lot of these things, and I'm eager to get into the maps in more detail for sure. Looking at, I think your last slide or one of the last ones, the minor collectors. I think normally we call those cut through. Is that okay that we have these streets that are cut through streets that people are using, even though they're really, neighborhood streets? Or is this a
streets are streets and people use them? Like, these are streets that we recognize move across the county. They provide access. We're not saying we're designing for high vehicle volumes on these, but we're recognizing that they do provide connectivity within the county. And that's something that's important to reflect. And it's not just connectivity for vehicles, but we're going to want sidewalks on both sides of these streets. Right. They play an east-west or a north-south connection. And without them, you lose the it basically puts an undue burden if we don't have access to these streets for all modes onto everything else within the county. It's a network. They're not standalone streets.
Yeah, I get it. I think we all know that Waze and mapping software has increased the throughput on neighborhood streets, and recognizing that happens is not the same as saying it's okay for all that to happen. I get it. When I'm trying to zip my way through the county efficiently, I'll take some of these minor collectors. But I just see a lot of other traffic that I would say doesn't belong in there. On the green streets, it belongs in the blue streets, and it can do the blue streets, but it takes 3 seconds more according to Waze, and so it routes them to the green streets. So I'm just wondering if that's something that we care about, if that's the mission of this neighborhood streets to be cut through streets in order to preserve a robust overlapping of possible routes in the mesh of all the streets. I'm just not sure I agree.
I hear you, but one of the things that we do have from a policy perspective is making sure our transportation network is resilient, and resiliency includes redundancy. And I do think that we want to caveat that these aren't cut through. They're designed to be lower speed. And if people are traveling at lower speeds, then that's good. If we, as part of all of the programs we have as a county, have identified challenges with, excessive speeding or speeding on these streets, we'll come in and we'll do treatments, and we'll look at how we make sure that those streets continue to have safe speeds on them. But we are really making sure that people recognize that these streets are neighborhood streets, and neighborhood streets can also have other people driving on them, because everybody has to get somewhere in the county.
Right. Okay. So I get it. I don't necessarily agree. I know making the streets lower volume, lower speed is the right call, but there are bad accidents that happen with people that are not, that are launching off of the roundabouts because they're driving 50 miles an hour down a neighborhood collector. So I don't have a solution. I'm just wanting to see the approach. Thanks.
Mike Hanna, you're up next.
Yeah, just a quick question. The pedestrian prioritization that you had, can you speak to how that relates to the other prioritization, since pedestrians were always priority one everywhere? So how does this relate to that? Is this could this drive separate capital projects just to put in sidewalks separate from other
Yes.
prioritization?
Yes. So that was one of the things that we had been hearing from this group, is that so much of the corridors are really focused on kind of how we reallocate right of way to integrate, a bike facility based off of bike priority or enhanced transit connectivity. And a lot of what we're hearing is like our missing sidewalk links and our challenges within the county aren't always on those streets. So like, how do we recognize the importance of filling gaps for pedestrians separate from those? And this is kind of that foundation for us of like how and where we look to see kind of the areas that we recognize as the most important. Every street should be designed first for pedestrians to be safe and comfortable. But we need to know kind of, if those facilities don't exist, what are the areas that are most important to us? And we'll eventually have some sort of programmatic based decision making, but this is helping us really hone in, okay, where are the areas that are most important? We're going to work through those. And a lot of these already have sidewalks on them, which is great. But Mike, you're exactly right. It's kind of the idea that long term, we're going to look at this and say, okay, how do we improve pedestrian connectivity too?
Great, thanks.
Kaylee, you're up next.
I think my question is quite similar, but I think I would still love to ask it and get your perspective. So first of all, I just want to say I'm totally new to the transportation as someone on the economic development side. I just want to thank you for how much thought and care has gone into all of this. And it's just really fascinating to see how you're thinking about the problems and solving it for the people of Arlington. So very grateful for the foundation you've laid out. I think my question has to do with, again, the pedestrian priority section. When I think through, like, I don't know the right words, but like a dead zone where it's very difficult for people to walk through. In difficult meaning it can be quite dangerous with like not a lot of protections when you're crossing traffic and things like that. It's just very clearly areas that were designed for cars first, pedestrians last. I'm curious if there isn't a school, if there isn't these other kind of higher priority areas. I think Arlington's done such a good job already of making those areas safe. So I'm curious, how do we, like the idea of like you build it and they will come. I think people would want to walk a lot more in these sections that are dead zones now if you were able to improve it. So just curious how you're thinking through that.
No, it's a great question. And we could have like a 2-hour conversation about all of that. Quickly, our Vision Zero program does focus on those places that we know are ongoing safety issues. So there's like a whole program that already focuses on things like that. I very much love your build it and they will come. It's a whole challenge sometimes when you want to build a crosswalk. And one of the requirements of building a crosswalk is how many people are crossing today. And it's like, well, no one's crossing today because there isn't a crosswalk. And you get caught in that cyclical loop. But I think what we will say is that there are still, in like the hierarchy, we still have destinations people are wanting to walk to more than not. And in these tiers, we will be prioritizing those places that are the least comfortable, but we still want to take the tiered approach. And if we happen to knock out everything in tier 1 right away, that'd be lovely. I think it's a 5 to 6 year to 20-year work program, maybe, who knows, but still recognizing the fact that these are still the places where we have the youngest or the oldest or, need to walk to. And we will still have those challenges within there. I think there will be no lack of locations that we feel need improvement within tier 1. It doesn't mean we forget everything else because there are so many other ways we do identify safety improvement projects that isn't just this. This is a lens we're taking to not forget the segments that may be important to just the pedestrian network.
Thanks so much for explaining that. I really appreciate it.
Liliana, you're up.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for that comprehensive presentation. I learned a lot. I was very interested in all the detail. Just a silly, I don't want to say silly, but based on experience comment, I think that taking as criteria schools and recreational centers, and it's important. But as a mother, I would also say, like, when you buy your food, the supermarket or something like that, and I recognize that might be difficult, but there may be areas where people cannot walk to just go and buy their things.
That's what the commercial areas are.
Yeah. Oh, the commercial. Oh, okay. I understood that was just like an aisle with you buy other things other than food. Okay.
No,
got it.
so commercial
commenting.
areas are what are zoned for things that aren't residential. So it's your corner 7-Eleven, it's restaurants, it's offices, it's anything that isn't zoned exclusively residential has commercial in it. We recognize exactly what you just talked about. It's where you pick up your prescriptions, it's where you pick up your milk, it's all those, it's where your doctor's offices might be. Those fall within commercial areas, and that's why it's in tier
Perfect.
1. Yeah.
Great. Perfect.
No,
Thank you so much.
it's a great flag, because that might not be clear to those of us who also aren't in the land use nerdiness as well.
Thank you.
Pam, back to you.
Clarifying question about tiers. So A Street, part of it could have a commercial strip. It's a long street. Part of it could be semi-residential. Is it still considered a tier 1 if there's a commercial strip anywhere on it? How do you figure that out?
So the county has broken down the streets into very short segments, many short segments. And we did these from the centroids of the segments to really hone into, like, we want it from the actual commercial, not the commercial corridor itself, but like from that, like there's a CVS on the corner, what is, within that very close distance, not what's 12 blocks down the street.
Okay, thank you. That helps. That makes sense.
Mike, did you have another question, or is that your hand from before? From before. No worries. I just wanted to throw one thing on, based on what Aaron Schutz was saying about the collectors. I am fully on board on like recognizing the transportation usage of these. I think that's great. I do think we sometimes get a little precious about our neighborhood streets, and like try and treat them like they're some sort of like, private, asset or whatever. My only fear, and that's something I want to make sure we avoid, is like right now we have some restrictions on what you can do on arterials from a safety standpoint. And I just want to make really sure that we don't, I'm going to use my phrasing, hamper the residents on those collectors by doing something like that, where we say certain safety interventions are off the table because this is a collector street.
So we're having conversations internally about that too. And the wonderful thing is we are creating collectors and therefore get to think about what does make sense on these.
Sounds great. Any other questions before we move on the agenda? I don't see any hands. What's next?
Next is you guys are going to talk about all of the amazing work you did. And I'm going to hand it off to Chris, but what I did do in this PowerPoint is I put, the policies in here so we have a reference point if we need them.
Great. So this is an opportunity for us to chat. Hopefully some of you have had a chance to review the other commission's submissions. I'm also happy if you really want to highlight particular draft strategies that your commission or committee felt super strongly about and submitted. For those of us who were not able to review every single thing, it was 100% my intention. But my week got thrown into disarray as my father passed away this weekend. So my apologies that I have not read every single one of your strategies as I intended to. But I do have one question when we get to that policy that I would love to hear some more from that particular commission about their suggestion. So we could go through policy by policy. I'm not sure that's actually super useful. So let me start off and say, if you've got a particular couple of strategies that you're super excited about, think you really nailed in your committee or commission, and you want to share with the group, for those who might not have read it, would love, just throw your hand up and share those for the good of the order. Go ahead, Pam.
Hi, what I prepared was just how we thought about the problem and how we set our priorities. Would that be helpful to share?
Go for it.
Okay, I'm the contact for the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and we had really good input from our committee. I sent out Kristen's form very quickly, and 2 of our members jumped on it right away and started filling in all the blanks. And 6 of us ended up having input into it. I kind of sorted things out. Ember did the final edit, and it was approved by the majority of our members. So I can't read all of them. I want to talk about what our goals were for setting our strategies. The first one is to correct guidelines on the current pedestrian element that are problematic. Specifically, we recommend wider minimum pedestrian clear zones on both commercial and neighborhood sidewalks, so 8 to 10 feet versus 6 feet for commercial areas and 5 to 6 feet for most neighborhood streets. That's policy 18, strategy 2. Second was to add any important guidelines in the current pedestrian element that were not in the MTP update draft, which is completing the pedestrian network, policy 23, strategy 1. And 3, to fix the current broken system for planning, building, and maintaining sidewalks in both commercial and neighborhood areas, policy 23, strategy 2. For commercial sidewalks, currently these sidewalks are sometimes non-uniform in design, materials, or width, or they don't exist. Over time, it is sometimes not clear who is responsible for their maintenance or how to report problems. We encourage the county to take over sidewalk building and maintenance with funding from the developers for commercial sites. And for neighborhood sidewalks, the county has many missing sidewalks in the neighborhood, including on my block, and neighbors can often veto new ones from being built. We propose changing key policies to encourage building out the sidewalk network in the neighborhoods. And then we had a whole bunch of policies that helped ensure that pedestrian priority could actually work. And I could go over some of those or not, your choice. Do you want to move on?
As long as I got you handy, it was actually one of PAC's strategies that I had a question about. So I'm going to ask you about that one specifically, if you don't mind.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so one that was in the PAC submission is develop a short street design framework that explains how the county decides when to add safety features like pedestrian refuge medians, curb cuts, raised crosswalks, daylighting, protection for bike lanes, parking removal, and require each major project such as SPRCs, capital build, and operational decisions to include an explanation referencing that framework. This sounds a lot like, but not completely like, the county's multimodal toolkit, which talks a lot about all the various different like safety things that we can do. Can you maybe go into a little bit more detail about the vision for this thing and how it's different from that?
Do you know which policy that was?
It's on policy 2, clearly communicate how decisions are made when developing.
Okay. And this one, okay, yeah. Yeah, that was not one that I wrote. I think Amber wrote this one. Or maybe Dave, hard to say. And it could be that whoever wrote this was not quite aware of what already exists. And there are some things in there that we know already exist, and that could be what this is.
Let me jump in, Pam. One of the things I thought of the difference is I think the toolkit is what the county can do, and this is a little bit more what the county will do, or what their process is for deciding when they're going to do it.
What that decision making looks like.
What that decision making looks like, because our issue with the toolkit is there's a lot of neat designs in there, but it's never clear when one is picked over the other, and when how the county decides when something's not feasible, or there's always trade-offs. So it's that decision making process, not just the tool itself.
Great, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mike. I think you're right. Because that fits in with the clearly communicate how decisions are made. Yeah, thank you. Anything else, Chris?
No, that was the one that jumped out at me. I was like, oh, this is interesting. I want to know more.
I have more I can talk about later, maybe. Thank you.
Anybody else have questions on other people's submissions or things to share? Go ahead, Aaron.
Thanks. So I just started kind of big picture looking through all of them today, different groups. and trying to see how they meshed with what my group had put together. There's a couple of themes that I'm starting to see. A lot of talk about APS and safe routes to schools. People really concerned with that. And as somebody who works in APS and who was almost run over by a school bus today on my bike ride home, I do care about that. Vision Zero, I keep seeing that pop up a lot. ProWag or ADA compliance shows up a fair amount. The idea of dedicated funds for certain things, where we really put our money where our mouth is, whether it's TDM or sidewalk or something like that, just being very explicit. And really using data, data to show what we're doing transparency wise, data to justify choices, and even not just actions, but also lack of actions. Like, we're not doing this because of these things. The policy says do this, and here's why we're not doing it. So just that transparency showed up in a lot of things besides just the transparency policy thing. So I think that was really great. The one thing I would point to, I don't think ours were particularly standing out as noticeably different, but I was trying to get at least a few of them to represent showing a data-based statement. So, how road standards, repaving criteria, the county CEP policy, decarbonization goal, we should align with that. Things like that where we can connect to already existing things going on in the county and kind of hitch our wagon to that horse and make sure that the county is one county, not 15 different departments, all with their own ideas of what should happen. A lot of good stuff from all the different groups. I like them.
Great.
And,
thank you, Aaron. And
sorry
thank you
about
for
your
getting
dad.
that. Thank you. And thank you for getting that AI, getting them organized by by policy. That was awesome.
You bet.
Liliana, go ahead.
Yes, so I wanted to talk about two policies that we actually thought about the strategies for. They are the two in bucket 6, and also the policy 15. And for 6A, we thought that we should suggest a pricing scheme or the implementation of pricing strategies. Could be parking pricing or potentially congestion pricing paired with subsidized transit passes and e-bike programs for low-income residents to make sure that we manage affordability, that we secure affordability while managing demand and create an incentive system. So that is a very actionable strategy, and thinking about how that extra cost for parking or potential congestion could subsidize the transit passes and e-bike programs that have been proven to help reduce emissions. The other thing that I wanted to highlight is that we suggested that the county considers establishing a funded timeline for transitioning the county fleet and the ART buses to zero emissions by 2030, like establishing a goal, because that really will help us reduce greenhouse emissions, and having a goal and a timeline. It's the best way to get people aligned and to have some clear goal. And the second strategy we propose is to deploy comprehensive public EV charging network that is integrated with the model priority networks. We think that is super important because we're not going to be able to transition into electric vehicles unless we have the infrastructure. And the other policy I wanted to highlight and share with you is, or strategy we suggested, is in policy 15 that has to do with how the county evaluates the progress and effectiveness of the transportation plans, the projects and initiatives. We suggested the establishment of annual reporting on transportation emissions by source because it is important to measure and to have information and to make that available to the public. It's a way for us to be accountable. So those are the strategies we wanted to highlight that we hope that are in line with the other commission's objectives and proposed strategies. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Liliana. Elizabeth, did you want to go ahead?
Yes. Hi. The Disability Advisory Commission, you said to mention some things that are particularly important. And one of the things that we discussed is in the effort to get rid of parking in order to facilitate walking, we think it's a good goal. However, we want to ensure that anytime that parking is reduced, that you would maintain some spots for van accessible vehicles. And this will not automatically be considered by planners because the ADA only requires a certain number of disability spots if the area already has other parking. So this will be something that the county has to proactively think of. And also, we appreciated the transportation section, and particularly, being able to wave or not even have to use signal buttons, and being able to use technology to identify if somebody is still in the crosswalk, maybe they're walking slower. And my question about that is, since it is a goal, what will your effort be to ensure that something like the technology is actually funded? How much sway will this plan have in access to funding?
This plan's a policy document, so it sets kind of our values. Funding kind of follows from it. It's also determined by the CIP and the board. And for better or worse is based off of kind of what funds are available, but this helps set kind of what the values are that we're working towards. So unless we articulate it here, we don't have the opportunity to advocate for it in the future.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Anybody else? Otherwise, I'm just going to shout out Transportation Commission for a great set of strategies and a remarkable number of quotation marks. Really, it feels like you guys got paid by the quotation mark. John, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I just wanted to reemphasize our sort of big picture position here, and our strategies flowed from that. And the big picture is that if Arlington is able to, it's sort of as if you build it, they will come idea. If you make alternative transportation much more attractive, accessible, safe, and viable, then it frees up a tremendous amount of space that can be used for other things. And in the introduction to our strategies, we went through some of that data and showed that, in fact, if 30 people don't walk or bike to the grocery store, you can eliminate a quarter acre of parking, and that's a huge amount of space available. And we also provided some examples of cities that have taken this strategy. Of all places, Indianapolis, in the red state of Indiana, built an 8-mile culture loop bike lane they took a whole lane of traffic, made a protected bike lane with trees, greenery, outdoor spaces, and led to $300 million in economic development. And people flocked to this thing, and the traffic went down. So our basic notion is you build these alternatives, you create more freedom to travel by all these different means, and you provide more freedom for drivers, even if you take away space from the lanes, because there'll be much less traffic congestion. reduce VMP, and you get all these ancillary benefits: stormwater mitigation, heat island effect, more greenery, streetscapes. And, you know, Arlington has even done some of this already. A little screen saver behind me is Sycamore Street in my neighborhood, which was once a dangerous 4-lane road and is now a beautiful boulevard with a median and a bike lane, and is much safer for everyone, and traffic moves actually better. So that was all our strategies sort of flowed from that general big picture idea.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, John. Justin, go ahead.
Echoing a little bit of what John just said, something that we emphasized, I think it was specifically under number 9 of the strategies, was this placemaking idea of, you know, finding opportunities to create pedestrianized zones, plazas, even shared streets where there's a clear preference for non-car traffic in that space, to help ensure that there's, you know, that we're making interesting places that people want to go to and that are interesting and aren't just kind of the normal environment that we're regularly used to as Americans throughout the country. So more opportunities to use our curb space efficiently to do that, and creating more pedestrian first street typologies and low stress networks that would help to design spaces that feel like they're comfortable for people to flock to, you know, relax in, visit shops and restaurants and cafes in that space. And again, just trying to prioritize that getting there. It doesn't have to be right up to, you know, the curb edge in a car. Still prioritizing disabled parking. We've made that a clear part of what we also listed as well, that when we are reducing single occupancy vehicle incentives, we are simultaneously prioritizing access for individuals with mobility challenges. So I think making sure that we're balancing those pieces, but not being afraid to create spaces that are a little bit different than what we're all used to, with having the ability to kind of pull a car right up to the edge of a building.
Great, thank you so much. Anybody else? All right, I think that's all the discussion we want to have, Kristen.
Sounds good. I was expecting a bit more, but this is amazing. We've started diving into the larger responses as well, and are very excited to kind of integrate those into the strategies as we're developing them. So your work will be integrated into our work, and that's very exciting for us. I just do want to kind of say thank you. I thought we were going to go policy by policy and it was going to be a longer conversation, so we scheduled a lot more time for it. But the takeaways shared today were great. High level next steps, we're taking, you know, everything that you guys shared with us. We're looking at it. We're seeing how and where we integrate all of it. Obviously, not every single strategy that every single committee and commission will be exactly in the plan, but the themes that kind of, I think, were elevated here are really things that we're going to be focusing on and making sure that we're finding homes for them. A lot of things that are being talked about today are things that we've identified ourselves too as important, kind of the streets as places, the ability to identify kind of opportunities to encourage people to take modes that aren't driving, to make those the modes of choice, not just alternatives, but the mode of choice: walking, biking, taking transit. Not even alternatives anymore. They're your primary mode. That's what we want to give people the opportunity and the flexibility to do. The strategies, the networks, everything together is going to start being layered in. We're looking at a meeting sometime in mid-April where we're going to bring a little bit more of those layers to you. The draft strategies that we develop, that will still be very draft, but kind of what we're working with and towards. We're going to bring those street typologies. I think those are going to be things people are really going to be excited to see. Those wider sidewalks, Pam, that you articulated, we are on board with those wider sidewalk indications within those typologies. It's something that we've identified as an important part of the plan as well. And then also curb lane hierarchies, which I know there's a lot of kind of appetite to see. reflective kind of all of the different things that need to happen in that curb lane. It's not going to dictate explicitly what happens on everyone, but it's going to help us understand when we look at corridors or when development projects come in, how we think about that space between the travel lane and the physical curb in the future. Those are all going to be pieces that we're pulling together into a bigger draft plan that we hope to release sometime late spring, early summer. There'll be a meeting in before we release that. We just don't know when, so we're not even putting a TBD date as far as a meeting goes, because we want to preview kind of the totality of those contents for you. And there's going to be a public review of the draft plan out there where your advisory group is going to get the opportunity, the advisory group and your committees and commissions are going to get the opportunity to kind of like let us know if this is hitting the mark, where we need tweaks, all that sort of stuff. That's going to be your next homework assignment or assignment to take back to your committees and commissions. We're not sending you home with one today. The work you guys did to get what you shared with us today was amazing. We know a lot of energy went into it. Take this wonderful spring break, likely focused month for what it is. Enjoy kind of maybe slightly pendulum swinging weather. Enjoy the highs. Just bundle up for a few days. We want to say thank you. I genuinely did not think we were going to end as early today, so I'm a little surprised but pleased. I'm going to turn it back over to Chris one more time just to make sure that we don't have any public comment.
Great. Yeah, I haven't seen anything go by in the chat, but if you are here to give public comment, now would be the time. You can just drop your name in the chat, or you can briefly unmute and let me know your name and we'll put you on the list. Going once. Going twice. Nope. Think we got no public comment? Oh, Eric Goodman, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, I appreciate allowing me to speak for a moment. One of the things I guess I noticed, even looking at these collectors and everything, I think we still have some challenges with north-south travel through the county, even looking at the bicycle network as well. I certainly would hope that we could find some more, I guess, lower stress ways to get from north to south in the county, because it seemed like the options are limited to kind of higher stress routing. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Eric. Seeing nobody else, I believe we are adjourned. Thank you all, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Enjoy this warmth. It's apparently going to briefly snow tomorrow and then be back to warm again.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Good night.